Ladies and gentlemen, g'day. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Economics Mate, and this is World of Tanks Blitz. And if you're new here, well, thank you so much for dropping by. And of course, if you haven't done so yet, consider subscribing if you like what you see. And in front of you right now is the Vickers MBT. Now, this is a tank, for some reason, that came in the game a few months ago, or rather, I should say, quite a while ago actually now. It came in, it was in crates, and then Wargaming released it as a tank that you can just buy outright for like 80 bucks Australian. And it just sort of came, it conquered, and then just buggered off. And we never heard from it ever again. Which is a shame, because it is quite a nice tank. It is, honestly, a very, very nice tank indeed. And people sort of don't even know this tank exists. I think Wargaming didn't do much marketing for this tank compared to, let's say, the Defender Mark 1, for instance, or the Centurion 5-1, or the Chimera. I mean, these are all British Tier 8 medium tanks, right? They all play similar to each other, but also different in their own right. And I think that the topic of today's question is going to be very simple, and that is Tier 8 still relevant today? That is the big question. Like, Tier 8 it's a tier that people tend to sort of jump down to when they don't want to play Tier 10. And I can comfortably say it still is relevant today as it ever was before. In fact, I would comfortably say it's still as good as it ever was. And I think people don't give Tier 8 enough credit, especially considering the fact that there are some very nice tanks at Tier 8. Like, for instance, all the British tanks. Yeah, all the British tanks, especially the medium tanks, are fantastic. The Defender Mark 1, for instance, is an amazing medium tank. It really outshines the regular Centurion, which is a shame because the regular Centurion is not bad at all. It's sort of the legendary medium tank at Tier 8 that, everyone wanted to have at the time. And the Defender Mark 1 is just that, but better in every single aspect. The Centurion 5-1, again, is basically a Cent 7-1, just at Tier 8, and without Hesh, right? This is basically this, just so much better. Better armor, better mobility, just the same amount of, almost the same amount of DPM, but just better all around and a better looking tank altogether. And then the Chimera, a massive gun, 120 millimeter gun, you're doing whopping amounts of over 400 alpha damage, right? Especially if you hit with that HE, it's basically like a heavy tank. It just plays like a medium, and it's just cool all around. It's a very nice tank. And then you have this thing, the Vickers MBT, which is the new kid on the block for the British medium tanks. And it just sort of cemented how good Tier 8 is at the moment. I mean, for God's sake, you have tanks like, for instance, you got these tanks, for instance, right? Like the ISU 130, which in my opinion is better than the ISU 152. I'm going to be making a comparison video between these two tanks, by the way, the ISU 152 and the ISU 130. This thing is a beast. Do you want to know why? Because it has tungsten, and it has adrenaline, and it has that premium AP shell that does more damage, but it has less pen. So basically, you have better DPM, you don't have as much pen as you would with an ISU 152. Yes, you will get shots off in the ISU 152 with HE that you won't get with, of course, the ISU 130. But the ISU 130 just has so much better DPM. It has the tungsten, it has the adrenaline, and it just pumps out damage like no tomorrow. And it's just fun. The SU 130 PM, again, another perfect tank. Tier 8 is full of these things. It's so much fun to see. Basically, like I said, Tier 8 is essentially Tier 10, but 2 tiers down. That's what it is. It's just, you have such a massive selection of tanks. It's unbelievable. If I were to do this, stick to Tier 8, look how many. There is 157 tanks. 157, that's insane. 157 tanks at Tier 8. And counting, because there will be more coming in down the line. It's crazy when you think about it. The T-77, again, another prime example of a tank that is very, very good. It's basically a T-57 heavy at Tier 8. The Chrysler K, No one gives this tank enough credit than it deserves. It really is a fantastic heavy tank, right? Even the EXP, the Mutant, this thing is OG cool. Like, it still slaps even to this day. The T28 prototype, again, another tank that absolutely slaps. You get the gist. Tier 8 is full of tanks that are very, very good, and even tanks that are not so good and quite trash. I'll be honest with you, the T26E5, Sheriff, it's good, but it's nothing to cry home about. The T32, this is a very cool tank. It's OG cool. It's been in the game for a while, and I mean, who doesn't love the T32? This is a very underrated tank, but you get the gist. And then there's tanks like, for instance, in the German line, tanks like the Borsig, tanks like the Jagdpanther 2, tanks like the Scorpion G, which I absolutely adore, the Jagdtiger 8.8, right, the Kanon Jagdpanzer. This is actually a very nice tank. This is basically an E25 at tier 8, right? The Jagdtiger, the regular Jagdtiger. These tanks are just awesome to play. And this is why I say tier 8 is basically tier 10, just 2 tiers lower. That's what it is. You just have a large selection of tanks. You can play it, you can enjoy it. There is so many tanks to choose from, so many tank types to choose from. And I personally think tier 8 is still relevant, if not more relevant now than it has ever been. Everyone wanted to go to tier 10. That was the thing, right? Like, everyone wanted to be at tier 10 once upon a time. This is me and my good friend I Love Lettuce, who's playing in their STRV, or the Sturv 81, and I'm playing in the Vickers MBT. And I'm going to show you just how fun a tier 8 match can be, even on a map like Normandy. Now keep in mind, this again was like a match very early in the morning, right? I'm just playing around, but I thought, you know what, let's jump in a tier 8 tank, and I just picked a random tier 8. I said, you know what, let's go play in the Vickers MBT. This tank doesn't get talked about enough. This tank doesn't get, showcased enough. Let's showcase it. Let's play the MBT, and I absolutely adore it. This is a great medium tank. It doesn't get enough love. People seem to think that, it's not that good, blah, 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 blah. It's a great tank. Yes, it was super expensive when it came out. It was basically $80 Australian, which equated to about $60 US and about £50 British or sterling. It was quite expensive for a tier 8 tank, but nonetheless, now that it is actually in the game and it's had its moment of extreme expensiveness, it can be resold now for gold. It can be resold at a much cheaper price because they released this tank, as I said, in crates. And that's the problem that I have with wargaming, is that all these new tier 8 tanks that are coming in, whatever, they usually get released in crates, like the Titan Strife, for instance. But then wargaming released it as a tank that you can purchase outright, which was great. I'm surprised most people didn't just buy the tank outright. Instead of just spending money on the crates and hoping that they're going to get lucky to do it. So yeah, it's interesting to see. Now, as I was saying, tier 8 is so much fun, right? Like, look at the lineup of tanks that we have. There's a Centurion Mark V, there's the Chi-Se, or the Chi-Se, whatever you want to call it. Whatever you want to call it. You got the Progetto. You got 2 Progettos, actually. Surprise, surprise. I believe they're in a platoon, which is nice. A Type 59, a Super Hellcat at tier 7. We're not going to go for the tier 7 tanks, right? On our team, an E75 TS, the Vickers MBT, the T54 E2 Shark, which, by the way, is a fantastic tank. Look at me bouncing shots on this thing. Honestly, you wouldn't expect it to bounce shots, but it has an armor profile that is actually very nice when you use it correctly. Again, this is not a big damage game, but it showcases that you can use the skills that you learned at tier 10 to implement them at tier 8. And, this is not really considered... Also, by the way, my shot there, I was super pissed that my shot did not go in. I'm getting shot by the Type 59. I'm getting shot by the Prog. I'm in a bit of a dire strife here. Basically lost almost half my hit points. So I need to be very, very careful indeed. By the way, I Love Lettuce has lost basically all of their hit points, so good on you. Good on you, you legend. I do get an Amarak. The thing with this tank is that it has enough alpha to basically finish it off with an AP shell. I shot him, I believe, with a HE shell, and I ended up just ammo-racking him anyway, so it was nice. Try to get a snapshot there, but obviously because I'm playing on EU, I do have some ping, so yeah, that was my mistake right there. But you can see, it's fun to play, not only this tank, but just that tier 8 in general. It's just so much fun. I tend to jump between tiers, tier 9, tier 8, tier 10. And I usually stick to tier 9 and tier 8. It's just because I just feel like there's so much more fun. At tier 10, there's just so much toxicity. There is such a high standard level that, you know, you must perform exceptionally well at tier 10 to really have fun. But the reality is, you don't have to. You don't have to. The reality is you literally don't have to do that. And there you go, 2,193 damage. I killed 3 tanks. I blocked 850, which is not bad. And I ended up becoming second in damage on my team. And of course, I Love Lettuce did more than I did, which was, you know, surprise, surprise. But my point is that you can still have fun at tier 8. You don't need to do crazy damage to have fun. A lot of tanks like the Vickers MBT, like the Panzer M41 Bulldog, like for instance the Scorpion G, like for instance the SU-130 PM, all of these tanks are just so much fun to play. They are so much fun to play, and they're all so versatile. There's so many tanks to choose from. You really have a wide variety of tanks, right? Which you don't have the luxury of at T10. Yes, T10 has a lot of tanks, but do keep in mind, a lot of those tanks, half of those tanks, in fact, are collector tanks, and of course, what do you call it? Yeah, they're just collector tanks, sorry, not premiums, but they're all collector, half the tanks are like collector tanks. Like, the amount of collector tanks we have at T10 is ridiculous, right? So, at least with tier 8, it's justifiable. You can justify the fact that, yes, some of these tanks are going to be premium, some of these are going to be collectors, understandably so. But the fact of the matter is that we have T10 collector tanks, like it's pretty crazy. We've always had tier 8 premium tanks. We never had T10 premium tanks. The first premium tank to ever come out was the M60 at T10. The first T10, I should say, premium tank was the M60. There was no need to have the M60 as a premium, but guess what? Wargaming introduced it anyway, years ago. Donkeys years ago. And then they started introducing tanks like the 121B, the T22 medium, right? What do you call it? The Chieftain Mark 6, the Concept 1B, the VK9001P. The list goes on and on and on, right? And that's the thing. That's the thing that I'm trying to say. Like, look here, right? You have the Ferdinand and you have the Elephant. You can choose between the 2 tanks that you want. If you don't want to play the Yak Tiger, you can play the Kayla, for instance. You know, if you don't want to play the Kayla, you can play the E75TS. If you don't want to play the VK101P, you can play the VK168.01. 0.01p. You don't want to play the Lerva, you can play the Tiger too. The list goes on. That's my point. It's just fun. It's a fun tier that everyone can enjoy. But unfortunately, for some odd reason, there are still people out there that want to shit on on tier 8. Players that play at tier 8, they for some reason want to crap on us. They want to say, oh, that's not competitive. Oh no, you want to play competitively? Why don't you play at tier 10? It's like, why? Why do we need to play at T10 to have fun? T10 is more competitive. T10 is where you showcase your utmost skill. It's where you showcase where all your skill is and all your knowledge in the game. That's where you showcase that skill, right? That's where you want to showcase that skill. You want to showcase that skill at T10. But when you're going down to tier 8, yes, you can still showcase that skill, but guess what? You can have fun. You can have fun. Because those are the tanks that usually are the ones that we purchase, that come in the store, that are in the auctions, whatever, the tier 8 premiums and collectors that come in. There's so many of them to choose from, right? Like, look, just here, this is the Tornwagen, right? Then we have the Lansen. Then we have the T27, the Skoda T27, the Progetto 46. The list goes on. There's so many to choose from. And that's why I believe tier 8 is the best tier in the game. And you can argue with me as much as you want, and you can argue in the comments, that's fine. But personally, I think tier 8 is the tier that is just the most fun. It's the tier that everyone loves to play, regardless what kind of player you are. This is the tier that everyone wants to play because it's just so much fun. There's so many tanks to choose from. There's different modes that you can play. You can still play ratings. You can still play tournaments at tier 8. It's still fun. If you don't want the hassles of tier 10 gameplay, play at tier 8. Because you'll love it. And that's just my opinions. You guys don't have to agree with me. You guys can, you know, have different opinions. Where you can say that tier 10 is probably your favorite. Who knows? At the end of the day, this is my opinions. I think tier 8 is as relevant as it's ever been. In fact, I think it's more relevant in this current meta than it's ever been previously. And personally, I think tier 8 is the best tier in the game. End of story. And it's a perfect tier for those newbie players out there, for those new players out there, those noobs, right, who want to get better at the game. Tier 8 is the perfect tier for you guys to learn how to play different kinds of tanks, because most of these tanks that you see, they're perfect iterations. They're like perfect 2-tier down tanks, I guess you could say, that give you a good impression of what tanks at tier 10 are going to be like. So they're a good stepping stone. They really, really are. And that's why I am a big advocate for Wargaming to please bring back the tech trees and don't keep the sets, or at least make the sets feel like and look like tech trees. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to let me know in the comments down below what you think of tier 8, and whether you agree with me, whether you see tier 8 as just a waste of time, or whether you enjoy playing it as much as I do. Regardless, let me know in the comments down below. I love you all. Look after yourselves, look after your friends and family, peace in the Middle East, and as always, I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye-bye. And, by the way, Ramadan Kareem to all my Muslim brothers and sisters out there. Cheers, fellas.